There's a little bite. Reel down here. There we go. You ever feel like you're fishing out in the middle of nowhere? Actually, I am. If you look around, I'm way away from the shore. And what happens in the fall, especially on these northern lakes throughout the Midwest, is the panfish move off the weed line. Nice little bluegill, we'll put him back. Is they move off the weed line and they move out to the basin areas of the lake. And the reason for that, surface water temperature is starting to drop. And actually the warmer water builds up out in the basin, and that's where those bluegills, crappies, and perch go set up on. And what they do is they just kind of hover around a really nondescript area, and we use our sonar to go around looking with the boat in these basin areas and try to mark the fish. At that point in time, we'll drop a couple waypoints on them. But the whole key is to hover and move around where those fish are at. They're moving about, so what I'd like to do is fish a slip bobber system like this, set it for about a foot off the bottom, and then I put a little swivel, and then I use actually an ice fishing jig. And I'll tip that ice fishing jig with a little waxy or maybe a plastic. The fish will tell you what they want, but on this particular day, they're rather finicky, very light biters, so we put a waxy on there. And then I simply start working around the perimeter of the boat. One of the things I like to fish is a braided line, and there's a reason for that. If I'm fishing these lighter fish, they're way away from the boat, the bobber goes down, I can get a much better hook set into that fish. Typically, I always use a mono or a fluorocarbon leader when I'm fishing this type of situation where I have a braid main line. And there's a couple things that mono or fluorocarbon will do for you. You get a much more natural presentation, so it makes these microbaits much more lifelike when they're down there in the water column. The one thing that fluorocarbon typically does for you is it's almost invisible. So if I'm fishing real clear water, I want to go to a clear fluorocarbon line, and that'll give me an added advantage if those fish are kind of finicky, so the fish can't see that line. We just went over a bunch of fish. I'm going to do track back on this sonar so I can go back and find that school of fish. Okay, we're starting to see them on the bottom here. Okay, now there that school of fish is. Now I'm going to put a waypoint along with this other one right there, and we'll save that. And we'll enter. So where we've got the waypoint on it, and we'll go back and see if we can catch a few of those fish. Oh, there's a bite. Got him. Feels like a good gill. We went over that school of fish, marked a waypoint on him, and threw the cork with the little jig on top of those fish, and bam, he was there. Out on these basin areas, like I said, it's hard for a lot of people, especially if you're used to fishing structure or weed cover or timber or brush piles, to go out and fish this open water. But using your sonar and just basically looking for fish. Oh, look at that nice gill. Nice bluegill. Look at that big beast. Oh, look at that fatty. A lot of times it's just drifting along with your boat or using your motor, but the whole key is to focus in on your sonar. So when you start marking those fish, put a waypoint on them. And even if you go over them like we did with this fish, we went over this school of fish. I thought, boy, I better go back and use the track back feature to see where those fish are at, put a waypoint on them, and then we quietly slid back up there with the electric trolling motor. Get this hook out of them. Little tiny hooks like that are extremely sharp, so when you pin them, typically you got them pinned pretty good. But we'll put this fish back in the water, but you can see how big those bluegills are, and you'd be surprised how many big gills you catch. And one of the things you do have to be aware of is practice catch and release on these fish, because these are real trophies. These are real bulls, so we'll put him back in the water here.